Hi, it's Kim Coleman, candidate for Congress in Utah's 4th Congressional District, also currently serving in the Utah House of Representatives in District 42. And tonight I say that because it helps kind of set the stage for my guests tonight as well. So I hope you're doing well out there, both physically, economically, and it's been beautiful weather. Hope all you mothers out there had a great Mother's Day. And so I need to also send out a little belated to my own mother, and I did get to spend time with my mother-in-law yesterday, but also to Joel, to my husband Joel, who's doing so many of the mom things these days, so I can run for Congress. And you know, he's not there with cooking. He's getting there. He's learning a few things, but he's great at the laundry.
Nice, that's good.
And the shopping. But anyway, he's doing a lot of mom functions, which is, I guess that's a stereotype. But anyway, he's been really great to fill in for me frequently while we run for Congress. So thanks for being with us tonight. And today we have Michelle Camp with us, and she is actually a constituent from District 42. And we just met about 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And she is an officer in the Well-Armed Woman Program. So I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more thoroughly and tell us about your favorite things.
My favorite things to do in my free time. So I'm a shooter. I like to go shoot. And my journey to going to shoot, like I would go to the range and I would have all guys there. And my dad lives in St. George now, so he couldn't go practice with me. And it's like, I need girls to go shoot with. So I kind of started looking for some girls to go shoot with and found the Well-Armed Woman. So that kind of took over my life.
So how long have they been around?
The Well-Armed Woman since 2012.
Okay.
I've been involved with them for 6 years, I think, now.
Okay, how many chapters? So you have a couple in the state, right?
In Utah, I think we have 9 now.
Okay, 9.
Got a lot. And then nationwide, I think we're just over maybe 420, somewhere around there.
Wow. Okay, and how do people find it?
TWAWshootingchapters.org. So we're a nonprofit.
Okay, so that's some girls' night out.
Oh, yeah. It's tons of fun. And that's the thing. When I started that, it was like, I thought I was going in to find other girls to shoot with. And my very first meeting, 35 women showed up. 30 of them had never even held a gun.
Oh, really?
So I was like, I need to step back a little bit. And so that kind of led to my instructor journey and where all this other crazy stuff got started.
Okay, so so share how we met, or how you met me.
We met because as I started doing my Well-Armed Woman stuff, trying to help and educate and train women to safely shoot and be responsible for their own safety with a firearm, I got much more involved in the legislative issues surrounding firearms and self-defense and personal protection. So I started really tracking what was going on in the legislature from a Second Amendment perspective and going up to committee hearings and calling my representatives and my legislators. And the very first committee meeting that I went to, I knew you were my representative, but we had never met. And I'd had people say, she's really good, but I didn't really know a lot. So the very first meeting, I was sitting there with a couple of friends, and after we saw you talk, I was like, I wanted to stand up and cheer. I was like, she's my legislator. I'm so excited. So I had to come introduce myself after.
Well, and that was the Second Amendment bill. It was very pro Second Amendment, and this was Representative Watkins' bill.
Yep, it was.
Right. Now, and I like to talk about the bills that are just no-brainers, but that there can be any opposition to certain bills will just still blow my mind. And last week we had Representative Carrie Ann Lisenby on with us on Facebook Live, and we talked about a couple of Representative Cory Malloy's that haven't passed. But I just don't understand where any opposition is coming from. I would just encourage people to follow your legislators. Your House members are up for election right now. These should be questions you ask. Yeah. But let's just pause right there and talk about Watkins' bill. Christine Watkins, she's a representative in Price. And this was a great bill.
It was a terrific bill.
And I think it was one that really kind of shows some divisions along Second Amendment versus there are some who believe that are that the less restrictive we are, the more risk there is to the population, and of course we understand that to be the opposite. But there really are some pretty divided camps. There's lots of middle, but really there are some pretty strong opposite views on what gun safety is about, what our rights are under the Second Amendment to protect ourselves, our own lives, and just to possess firearms. And this was one of those bills that I thought kind of showed two different parties where I didn't understand how there could be such division on this bill. Will you summarize that one for us?
Yeah, I didn't understand it either, because what the bill was, I mean, there's a process you have to go through to get a concealed carry permit, and you have to take a class, and it's a 4 to 5 hour class, and then go file your fingerprints and your photos and all that fun stuff through the Bureau of Criminal Identification in Utah. Well, what this bill was saying, if I was a victim of domestic violence and I went and got a protective order against my attacker, that protective order could serve as a concealed carry permit, in essence, until I had the time and the opportunity to get the course, up to 120 days. So it basically let someone carry a firearm concealed for 120 days with a protective order until they could get that class, which, if you live in somewhere in rural Utah, I mean, Salt Lake, that's easy. There's concealed carry classes every 15 minutes. But if you're in rural Utah, you could have an issue being able to get that and get the paperwork filed and all that stuff. So this was just to protect people. It didn't specify women. Anyone who had a protective order against them to be able to carry a gun, which they could do already open. It just let them carry it concealed, which is going to be a benefit to them in a situation like that. So to me, I agree. It seemed like a no-brainer. And I've told you before, I have in the past, and I still have, in general, a very cynical outlook towards politicians. And so when I went in there and I saw what some of the people on the committee were kind of spouting, it just reinforced my cynicism. And then I heard you, and I was like, it was like a light. There was like a light shining over you. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so refreshing. I love this. And I was looking at Connie, and we were like, oh my gosh, did you just hear what she said? Because you had said, like, I can't believe that we're up here and we're seriously debating a woman's right to be able to protect herself. Like, I can't believe you guys are arguing against that.
How is this? Yeah, how is this even a debate?
Yes.
So, and the presumption is, if you are someone who's been able to get a court-ordered protective order, the underlying presumption is that there is a risk to your life and safety. Okay,
Absolutely.
Just starting right there. Because you don't get that unless you can demonstrate to a judge that you need to be separated from a person because you have some viable risk of to your health and safety. So the next step is, now can I expedite the process of being able to arm myself? And so what this did was provide that ability to sort of to right now start to arm myself. And sometimes, I mean, we have a lot of discussion about domestic violence, a very serious and concerning subject, and we do see some tragic consequences of domestic violence. And you were there to argue that absolutely, because of, we should be able to arm ourselves.
Absolutely.
I should be able to protect myself, and to the fullest extent of the law, which is that you may conceal carry, but there is a lag in that application process. But if I can go to a judge and demonstrate that I need protection against another individual, let me have full protection right now.
Absolutely. I had a woman in one of my concealed carry classes who was probably 80 years old, and she showed up with sunglasses because she had just been beaten by someone she knew, and she was in fear for her life. And that had happened probably a couple months before we had gone to that committee hearing. And it just, to me, it was just like this poor woman. She was literally day out of the hospital. She got out of the hospital Friday, and she came to my concealed carry class Saturday, still with bruises. And, you just think, it doesn't say you have to carry a gun, but if somebody feels like that's the best way to protect their lives, we have instructors that have dealt with that have been through that will help teach these women for free. But they have to be able to protect themselves the best way that they see fit.
Well, and like you said, it would already be lawful for her to just carry openly.
Open carry, yeah.
Okay. Last week we talked about a bill that my daughter was involved in that was also carried by Carrie Ann, Representative Lisenby, that would allow people 18 to 20 to also conceal carry, where again they could open carry. But they're saying, in my daughter's case, I would like to maybe sometimes not just carry a gun openly on a holster, but I'd like to put it in my purse, in my backpack, or under my belt. And so it's counterintuitive to me. It doesn't even really make sense that we say you can wear it openly. You just can't have it in your purse.
Well, absolutely. And the thing is, if you're talking about open carrying a firearm, I'm definitely not anti-open carrying a firearm, but I believe if you're going to carry a firearm openly, you better have some weapon retention training. And I also think that if you're in a situation where you're in fear for your life, it completely gives that away. If somebody's stalking you or watching you and you're not aware that they're even there, they're formulating a plan of how do they get that gun away from you. And having that element of surprise and being able to protect yourself without everybody needing to know that you're carrying a gun all the time,
right,
is definitely important.
So if I'm a would-be perpetrator and I see here is where you're carrying, I am looking for a different way to surprise you.
Absolutely.
Basically.
That all goes into your planning.
So we hear this statistic that was brought up in that committee. It's
twice, two different statistics.
And every committee meeting, I think where we talk about self-protection and safety with firearms and our Second Amendment rights, that in domestic violence situations there are more cases of death and injury if there's a firearm present, and that's a statistic that gets thrown out all over the place. What is wrong with that statistic?
Well, you brought up the perfect thing that was wrong with that statistic in that hearing, which was, whose firearm is it? Is it my firearm and I'm being attacked, or is it the guy that's coming to attack me's firearm? Because that makes a huge difference. And that's not a statistic that they want to talk about or that they know about. Even the CDC estimates, which was a study that was done in the 90s and kind of buried, says that every year there are somewhere between 500,000 and 2 million.
500,000 and 2 million.
And 2 million successful defensive firearm uses, and many times there's not even a shot fired. I know so many people that have stories of just telling someone they had a gun or exposing their firearm that ended the situation. It de-escalated right there. So that's just not a good statistic.
And when you have those scenarios, you don't typically report the accident that didn't happen,
right,
or the
right.
event that didn't happen,
Yeah.
or a crime that was deterred from the outset. It's not a practical. We don't practically report those, and so it's hard to, like you said, it's an estimate, but it's a big estimate, 500,000 to 2 million, just the presence of a gun, just even to verbalize, which you teach. You teach through the well-armed women classes, well-armed woman classes, that how to deter the crime in issuing verbal warnings without ever showing your weapon. And so how many crimes are just deterred? And so those numbers don't ever make the statistic.
No.
But here was my point in that meeting. I don't care what the statistic is, honestly.
Agreed.
It's your right.
Yes.
It's your right to protect yourself and your life, and that we constantly have to be vigilant in protecting our rights to protect ourselves, our families.
I agree. And they take the language away from us because they say, well, we just want common sense. Just common sense gun reform. Like everyone should have a background check. If I want to sell a gun to my niece or give a gun to my niece who I've known since she was born. And that's, having to go down to an FFL and get a background check and track all that, it's crazy to me.
So let's talk about the common sense gun control and that notion. You use the example of universal background checks, that you oppose universal background checks.
Absolutely.
Why is that not just a simple common sense? Why shouldn't everybody have a background check? And let's just make sure that guns don't get into the wrong hands. We don't really want people who are criminals who have abused their Second Amendment rights to harm another person. So we don't want guns in their hands. So what's wrong with universal background checks? Why is that
Where
not
do
just
we
a
start?
common sense?
So, and that's the thing, because they say common sense, common sense. Well, there's no way to track universal background checks. If I were to go, we don't have a gun registration, so if I were to go in my garage and sell a gun to a friend or a relative, no one knows that happens. So it requires me to comply, which law-abiding citizens, gun owners, will do. But it leads to, the whole idea behind that, if you research it, is leading to a gun registration, because if you implement universal background checks, then 3 years down the road, well, we don't know if it's working because we don't have a way to track it. Well, how can we track it? By registering all the firearms. And, people think it can't happen here. It can happen here. If you go to one committee hearing in Utah, which everybody says, well, Utah's great on guns. You go to those committee hearings and you see that we have representatives up there that are not great on guns, that don't think that you should be able to freely have firearms in Utah, and sometimes they won't come right out and say that. And a lot of times in Utah you hear it couched with, I'm a gun owner. I'm a gun owner myself, and I'm a concealed carry permit holder. So it's okay. So that means I'm pro-gun, but I'm going to take away this right and this right and this right from you. And I've got this cover of I'm a gun owner, I'm a concealed carry permit holder, which really frustrates me.
So the other big concern the last couple of years has been red flag laws.
Yes.
And I'm just going to state right here that I have a record of voting against universal background checks in our state.
Yes, you do. Thank you. I can vouch for that. I've seen it.
Our red flag proposals.
Yes.
And really other efforts to restrict Second Amendment rights, increasing gun-free zones and things like that. And so what is your concern about red flag laws?
Here's my biggest
Because
concern.
isn't that another one of those?
It's a huge
Can't we
one.
just have common
Yes,
sense?
exactly.
red
We just
flag
need to
laws?
protect people, and I'm all for that. Utah has a great supplement that concealed carry teachers can teach with their CFP class that is about suicide prevention, which is a whole other story. But the red flag laws will allow somebody to say that they think that I'm a danger to them or to myself, and then the police can come, take my guns, confiscate all of my firearms with no due process, no hearing, nothing, just in case. And then eventually sometime I may or may not get a hearing and may or may not get my guns back. So, in a perfect world, if everybody was honest and somebody really only called the police when they were really thought, somebody's going to do something terrible, that would maybe be okay. But it isn't like that. If I have a neighbor that sees me unloading my range bag and they don't like guns, they can call the police and say they think I'm a danger. There are people who think just because you have guns you're a danger. So then I can have my firearms confiscated for no reason. It doesn't matter, it's just their word against, not even against my word, because they don't take my word. They just come take my guns.
So let me just put in a quick plug here. Right now, if you do not already have it, the Safe UT app, this is something that you want to have on your phone. You want to have if you have children in the home, you want to download the Safe UT app. And if I didn't have so many apps on
I
my
know the
phone,
feeling. You'd show up.
I would share that with you. My kids have it. Here it is. Looks something like this. Go on your app store, whatever it is, and download the Safe UT app. And this is an anonymous app that you can report your concerns about people that may be at risk to do harm to themselves or others, as well as reporting maybe incidents where you believe someone is being harmed, and whether it's like school bullying or things like that. So this app has proven to reduce suicides and other harmful acts in the state in the last couple of years. It's a fantastic app that we have. So there is that concern, and that people would use a firearm to harm themselves. There is a concern that guns will get in the wrong hands without universal background checks. But what do we really see when it comes to criminals and their compliance with gun laws?
Yeah. Criminals, obviously, I mean, just by definition, don't comply with laws. So it's difficult, I talk about this quite often. I do not ever sell guns because I don't want to go meet somebody in a parking lot at Walmart and sell them a gun. Like, it's just not my thing. I don't feel safe doing that. So if I ever have a gun I want to sell, then I'll have my dad put the word out, or I'll put word out between my friends. But I'm a law-abiding citizen. I don't want to see one of my guns end up in the wrong hands. So in the event I was going to do that, I would require somebody to have a concealed firearm permit, because that's, concealed firearm permits, especially in Utah, your background is run every day. Mm-hmm. So if I did something as a concealed permit holder, my permit is not going to be valid the next day. So having, law-abiding citizens don't want to be getting guns out on the street. And that's not how criminals are getting them. They're stealing them. They're breaking into places. They're selling them in the black market. Can I say Fast and Furious?
There's that.
Right? Oh, good grief. But it's just, that's not how they get their guns. They're not going to gun stores in general. They're not going and, buying them on Utah Gun Exchange from law-abiding citizens.
So universal background checks are for me and you,
yes,
law-abiding
absolutely,
citizens.
Absolutely. And having, if something happened to me and I had left the guns to people in my family, that would require that. You couldn't transfer even as part of an estate without a background check. So, yeah, it's just another way to if you look back over history, it's little steps. And if we do this, and if we give in this, then the next step becomes easier, and the next step becomes easier, and then pretty soon, we're Australia.
So I also wanted to just touch on a minute back at on the red flag laws and the intent of red flag laws. I think it's important for people to know that there are still mechanisms to get help for somebody who you believe might be at risk for harm to themselves or others. There is still in the law, and has been for a long time, the ability to report that, the ability to have intervention in those situations where we can address a real threat that someone may exhibit to harm themselves or others. And really, I think we're all looking for solutions to that very serious problem we have in our society today. I don't think anybody who opposes red flag laws are not of the mindset and the heart set to want to reduce just very tragic incidents of harm to self and suicide
Absolutely.
in our state. But we also are very cognizant of our civil rights,
right,
and rights to due process and stuff like that. So, okay, tell us again. Let's talk about the Well-Armed Woman. What you seek to do, what your organization tries to do. I mean, clearly the name says what it says, but really, what can you share with people in a society where there's more violence than we would like.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot from you and Connie.
Oh, good. That's what we try to do.
About situational awareness.
Yes.
Connie's pointing out everything to me. You see that bush right there? You see that pillar right there? You see that car? You see those shadows over there?
That's good. Good job, Connie.
I have my own experience in my life, two really significant experiences in my life, where I see the world around me a lot differently than before these experiences, where I do look at environmental factors differently. But anyway, so what do you want for?
Well, it's funny because I got into this whole thing just because I carried a gun. I'm a bill collector. Bill collectors people don't like. So I've carried a gun forever. And I wasn't practicing. So I was just looking purely from a standpoint of, I know I need to have practice. But when I got into this, it's like completely taken over my life. I mean, it's insane how much I love it. I know our other leaders do. What our goal is to educate, equip, and empower women. That's the high overarching kind of motto. But we don't just teach about guns. We teach all sorts of different things, because I'm a strong believer that if you're carrying a gun, I mean, you don't go get a concealed carry permit, get a gun, learn how to shoot a couple times, strap on your gun, and you're good to go. I mean, it's a continual learning process as long as you're going to carry that gun. And it's not just about guns. It's about, how to use guns, obviously, but also we've got gun safety, because that's a huge deal. We're dealing mostly with mothers or grandmothers. So being able to
children in the home.
Absolutely. So we do a lot of work and education with how to secure your firearms in your home, and still be able to have access to them. I have a specific chapter member who has a son who has a disability, and he can be violent. So I've worked with her about how can she have a gun in her house and keep it safe from a possible issue with her son. Like you talked about, situational awareness, one of my favorites, because you really have to know what's going on around you to save those precious few seconds if you are going to be attacked. Because if you have no idea, we call it condition white. Well, we didn't name that, but it's called condition white from Jeff Cooper. So if you're in condition white, you have no idea what's around you. You have no time to react. So,
well, and you've also taught us about
absolutely head in the
how
phone.
very little you can perceive in your environment if your face is like this versus if it's out here even. And sometimes we kind of joke about people walking into buildings or something like that,
down manholes,
because of having their phone. But even it's something even more risky, and being at risk for a crime perpetrated on you. But some of those little things you guys are kind of just making me aware of too.
Oh,
some of the science, behind cognition.
Yeah, we talked
and
too about
response.
that, like what happens in a deadly force encounter.
Right.
Because your brain, your body, everything's gonna react differently when everybody's been in that kind of fight or flight mode in some way or another. But if it's a deadly force encounter, that's going to be so elevated, and understanding what's going to happen with your body and trying to plan in advance how you would work through that is extremely important.
So along with that, you said deadly force in the area, in the area of what your rights are, actually. So because you have civil rights, and someone who you may use force against, you need to know what your rights are and when you can use deadly force, and really when you can't, and what your obligation as someone who is in a position of using deadly force, understanding what your obligation is as a gun holder, and when you can exercise that. Mm-hmm. And some of the states are different.
Absolutely.
So Utah is pretty good.
Utah's pretty good.
And so compare what we have, and I think Corey Malloy was also another good sponsor.
Yes,
he's
one of my other favorites.
So how is Utah better in this regard then? And because we hear stories that someone was breaking into someone's house and their body's half in, and a deadly force was used, and the person comes back and sues or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes there's confusion about what are my limits.
Yeah.
But it is different from state to state.
It is.
And so what can you?
Yeah, and that's what I try to
us?
tell people when I do concealed carry classes. Just because Utah gives you reciprocity to be able to carry your firearm in 36 or 38 other states, you still have to learn those laws if you're going to go there, if you're going to visit. You have to be aware of what those laws are in those other states. Utah has a couple of laws that I think are really, really good that I particularly love. And one of them is that if you were to shoot a perpetrator or attacker, and you were justified and the police didn't charge you, then the victim or their family cannot come after you and sue you, the perpetrator. So in a lot of states, I remember hearing stories about someone was breaking in their house and fell through the skylight in the ceiling and broke their neck and sued the homeowner and won. It's like, what? We don't have that in Utah. If somebody's committing a felony and they are injured, they can't come after you for that. So that's good. Utah has good rules as far as castle doctrine, which is defending your home. It's not called castle doctrine in Utah, but it's pretty much the same
Right.
thing. The thing that I like to try to instill in the students that I teach is that just because deadly force may be justified doesn't mean you always want to use it. So my number one, like in your home, if someone breaks into your home, we had that case in West Jordan a few years ago where the girl got in the guy's truck, opened the garage, went in the house, he shot her. It was a justified shooting and he wasn't charged. But you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life. And if you can avoid that, and everybody has to think their own situation. I don't have little kids in my house. It's me, it's my husband. If we're in our bedroom and someone comes crashing through the door, I'm calling 911 and I'm going to have my gun ready. I'm not going to go out looking for them.
Right.
Now, if I had kids in a bedroom down in the basement, I would probably go see what's going on. So everybody kind of has to think through those, and I'm really big on scenario. What am I going to do if this happens? Because if you're not thinking about it until it happens, that's the wrong time to be thinking about it.
So, some states, the laws vary regarding your obligation before you use deadly force. What is your legal obligation to try to run, try to hide, try to use some other way of avoiding harm or deterring the crime versus using that deadly force? And we are also a little bit different here too in Utah. And I think part of that is recognizing that science is understanding more the threat response.
Right.
So we used to have a sort of the notion of fight or flight. That's how your body and your mind is going to respond. You're either going to stand and fight or you're going to flee. Well, now we're learning there's a third
freeze
response, and
response.
it's the freeze response.
Absolutely.
And so it seems to me like that is what we're also responding to, is understanding that that might not be where my mind and body goes to run or to fight. And if I have the ability to use deadly force, the freeze response may come in there.
Absolutely.
And, or I may perceive that I am outsized, outpowered, and maybe I can't get away. Maybe fighting, I'm going to just be outweighed in a fight. So how do we differ on that?
So Utah, you hear it referred to a lot of times as stand your ground laws or duty to retreat. We don't have any kind of duty to retreat if you are in a deadly force situation, which means you have to imminently be in fear of death or serious bodily injury towards yourself or a third party. So you're not required to leave if someone's threatening you and you think they're going to kill you. If you are legitimately think that and you're reasonable, then you can use deadly force in that situation. So like I always say to everyone that I ever come across, just because you can, does that mean you want to? If you have a way to get out of there, get out of there. If you can get out of there, get out of there. We don't have any duty to retreat in deadly force situations in Utah, which is a good thing, because I know I talk to friends in California and it's some crazy stuff they got to deal with there. I didn't even know that till, I started getting all my well-armed women friends across the country, and it's like we have good stand your ground laws, but you do have to be in imminent fear.
Yes.
It's got to be something now. It can't be somebody on a balcony across the way saying, "Hey, I'm going to kill you." That doesn't fly.
And yeah, you may be standing before a jury,
Absolutely.
testifying to what those circumstances were. Okay, so we have a question.
Yeah, my question is, what about the shoot to wound?
Oh, that's a good one, because I get
Shoot
that in
to
every
wound.
concealed carry class. So thank you. Shoot to wound, because I do get that.
Okay.
People say, "Well, I don't want to kill anybody. I want to carry a gun, but can I just shoot them in the leg? Can I just shoot them in the arm? Will that scare them away?" And I always tell people when you're training, When you're shooting at the range, it's great to try to aim for the target that's a leg, that's not moving, that's a picture of someone, when you're completely relaxed and calm. If you are really in a deadly force encounter, you're going to be lucky if you can get your gun out and get it on target in time. You always need to aim for center mass. You don't know. You know, in TV, in the movies, they fire one shot and the person flies back 20 feet. It's not like that in real life. In real life, you're not even going to know, most likely, if your shots have impacted. And your attacker could keep coming after being shot multiple times in, center mass. So it needs to be aim for the center of the largest part that you can see, but, aiming for a moving leg, a running leg, an arm flailing around is a little, well, very complex. That's a hard shot to make without stress.
So it is very important that you, not only do you understand your constitutional rights under the Second Amendment, but to understand the state law and your civil rights and your obligations. Because with rights come responsibilities too.
Absolutely. And I tell people, before you carry a gun, you need to make the decision for yourself, and I'm not going to make it for you. But you need to know that if someone is threatening your life or the lives of your loved ones, that you would be able to use deadly force to stop them. Would you be able to take someone else's life to protect your own? And if you can't say absolutely yes to that, you shouldn't be carrying a gun, because you have to have made that decision beforehand. That also can't be some decision that you make at the time of something happening. Right. So, none of us that carry guns that I know, and I know a lot of people that carry guns every day, get up in hopes that we're going to have to use our gun. That's the last thing that any of us ever want to have to do. But it's just another tool that we have, in addition to our situational awareness and paying attention to our surroundings and not going places that invite trouble and all this other long laundry list of things that we do every day to protect our lives and to protect the lives of the people that we love and care about.
Okay, so you were present with the group during this past legislative session, and people will ask, they frequently ask me, why do you run bills that protect First Amendment rights? We already have them. They're in the First Amendment. You don't need to affect the law. Second Amendment, why do we have to continually fight for these rights? So we had this rally on the Hill. I was privileged to be a guest speaker at that rally, the Guns Save Lives rally, and we're on Capitol Hill. Why? And there were just tons of people there. Why do we have to rally still?
I don't know. That's a great question. But the thing is, I think that the further away that we get, I feel like people don't understand our rights. I feel like a lot of people don't care about them, which really chaps my hide, because I'm thinking these are important. These are important, even if you don't carry a gun, even if you think you have free speech. All of these things are so important. Everybody needs to know about them, and everybody needs to fight for them, because, I think people get busy with their day-to-day lives, and they just go about and they think I'm fine, and they don't worry about these things until it's too late. So hopefully we can get some people awake before it's too late.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to where we started. And let me ask you what your experience has been as a citizen advocate, because that's where I started. I mean, just a few years ago, we call it sometimes the hard seats. I've sat in the hard seats on the other side of the dais and on the phone lobbying my representative, my senator at all levels of government, showing up to city council meetings, showing up to committee hearings on the Hill, marching, rallying, waving flags and posters, and that's really where things started for me until my community said, "Hey, go push the buttons and go make the decisions for us," and then I ran to serve in the legislature. But what would you want people to know about being using your voice as a citizen, whether it's 200 people at a rally or 2,000 people in a march or 6 people in a committee hearing or 1 person on a phone?
Yeah. I think it's hugely important because, and that's the word that I try to spread with anybody who will listen to me, being able to meet you and to go see you in action and see you fighting for me and listening to me, I can call you, I can text you, I can email you, and I hear back. And we haven't always agreed on everything. We've agreed on all the Second Amendment stuff. But you will always listen to what my opinion is, and you can sit down and have a conversation with me about why you think it's different or what your thought process is, and that's fine. That's all we need. But people have to get involved, because if you don't, then you get people that think you shouldn't be able to protect yourself if, someone's attacking you. So I feel like it's so important. It's really so easy to just reach out to your representatives. Pay attention. Our legislative webpage is amazing. You can track bills by specific keywords, whatever is your core issue, and get to know your representatives. Stay in touch with them, and if they're not supporting you and they're not supporting your beliefs, then find somebody who will. Be involved.
So it's been my experience as a rep how valuable it is to have citizen input, and part of it is before you elect somebody, before you choose who you want to represent you, first find out if they believe in what you do, because that makes your job a whole lot
Yes, it
easier,
does.
because you can just check me on Second Amendment and start working somebody else who's not so maybe you're not clear on where they are in Second Amendment, but first as a citizen, knowing who you're voting for.
Yeah.
But second to that is that I've been influenced by a single constituent picking up the phone and saying, this is how this bill will impact me. Or, this is how this bill will impact my business. This is how this bill will impact my family. And it might just be that we didn't know that,
Right.
or I never envisioned that scenario. And I might feel one way about a bill, but now you help me see another facet of how that bill might affect somebody. And so I wish people could understand how powerful their voice can be. And I think I speak for most of the reps that I know in the legislature want to hear from you and want to hear from citizens, and can be absolutely informed, even persuaded differently. And there is a world where I have my own set of principles that I cannot veer from, because they're principles.
Absolutely.
And they're enduring, and they're concrete in my life that I try to stay tethered to. But lots of bills.
That's a good thing.
Well, yeah.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
That's what I look for in representatives.
Exactly.
But there's lots of policy that is administrative in nature. It's just the general functioning of government, where we can look at how a particular policy affects the people that we represent. And I want people to know so badly that your voice really does matter.
I agree. It's important. And I would like to say thank you, just because I've seen you in other bills that aren't just Second Amendment, and you are, I can tell, I've said that you completely took, I was so jaded before, and you restored all my faith in politicians. But because you do ask questions, like you're not just going up there and voting on stuff because everybody else is voting for it. You want to know, and I can tell that in committee hearings, you want to know what the impact is. What's the bottom line? What's this really about? Because a lot of times there is some other agenda behind whatever it is that's being presented. Yeah. So I appreciate and thank you for actually trying to get to the bottom of it and have a clear understanding before you vote for things, instead of just rubber stamping things, because your friend is the one who sponsored the bill. Because I've seen that happen too. It's frustrating.
Or, there are all kinds of pressures that come into the legislative process that, I'm running for Congress, and this is a place where, having had the experience in the state legislature where I know the tactics, and there are tactics, and sometimes it's just emotions, or sometimes it is, there are relationships to events and to policy, and there's a little bit of arm twisting, there's a little bit of just all kinds of tactics. I've had my back put up against the wall, my arm twisted. I've had sticks and carrots dangled in front of me.
Sure.
And the range of emotions, and for me, it's so important to just be grounded in the principles, so that I know what I believe, and can see through a lot of the fog of war. But
Well, and if people aren't telling you from a constituent perspective what they think about it, then you're all on your own.
right.
So you're not hearing from anybody to tell you, you know, what's going on or what they think is going on. So I think that's another important reason to be involved.
That's right. And a single person can make a difference in that process. And a bill has upwards of, 10 or more decision-making processes that you have a voice. And that's the other thing I want, I want people to understand. You as a citizen activist, you've experienced this, that bill's in a committee, you have a voice. And then the bill goes to the Senate, you have a voice. And before the governor makes a decision, you have a voice. And there are a whole lot of other smaller steps in between where you have a voice all the time. And that's what I would want people to just know from you, as a citizen activist.
100%. Just, I mean, our legislature's so short, the session. You usually got that 45 days. Pay attention to the website. See what bills are being proposed. Pay attention. Read them. Most of them you can understand. If not, call your representative and say, what the heck is this? But just know what's going on and make your voice heard, because it is important. And you find out after the fact, when it's a law, and then it's like, hey, wait, what? I didn't even know about that.
Okay, so we're about finished here, but tell us who's a good candidate for what you have to offer, and then maybe can you share other organizations out there that if yours isn't the exact fit, there might be some others.
Any female shooters that want to, we take experienced shooters, brand new shooters. We have, every one of our chapters has an instructor, or at least one, so most have multiple. Anybody who's wanting to learn about shooting or continue shooting, practice shooting, learn about self-defense. It's a great group of women. All of our chapters meet once a month. We do an hour of classroom education, an hour of shooting time on the range. We're not shooting on the range with COVID for the last couple months, but I think hopefully back in June we'll be back to the range. So anybody who's interested in learning more, you're free to come to a meeting for free. You're free to come for free and check us out. See if you're interested, if you like it, and then it's really easy to join. It's $50 a year, which is probably the best $50 you'll ever spend, in my opinion.
Where can you recommend some other groups? I know that's kind of antithetical to what
So
you do
there
as a
is
group.
there is another women's organization that's a little bit more geared towards competitive shooting, and I don't know a ton about them. They're in Utah, also A Girl and a Gun. There are no, I get this all the time, how many men's organizations
Well, that's
are
what I was
there?
going to say. What about
There
men?
aren't any.
What?
Someone needs to start one. I think it's the ego thing. The guys are all like, I already know what I'm doing. I don't need a group of guys to tell me
I don't
anything.
need directions
I
to
don't
get
need an
there."
instructor. So yeah, right now.
Okay, well, I
no.
guess that was what I was getting at. So, we're...
There are lots of instructional type places you can go. Most of the ranges have classes. I always recommend, if you're carrying a gun, do some defensive shooting classes, because standing and shooting at a range is completely different than shooting while you're moving, or shooting from cover, or shooting from concealment. So it's extremely important to get that kind of training in. So there's a lot that goes into it. Like buying a gun and getting a concealed carry permit is not the end, it's the beginning
Okay.
of a long, long list of training that you need to do.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. Again, highlights, Utah is a great state for Second Amendment rights.
And let's keep it that way.
Let's keep it that way. Let's keep it that way.
Yes.
You need to know what the laws are regarding how you can carry, when you can carry, where you can carry, and when you can use deadly force.
Absolutely.
And really just being a responsible gun owner too. So that is on us as
That is,
as
because it
individuals.
reflects, what we do reflects on all other law-abiding gun owners. So it's important that we understand it and that we are good stewards of our Second Amendment rights, because when we do stupid things, it really gets published.
right.
It's everywhere.
Well,
And thank you for everything you've done. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And this is how it's supposed to work. So, I represent you and you tell me what I need to know.
I like
so
that.
that is that. That's how that relationship in our representative government is supposed to work. But anyway, thank you so much for being with us again tonight. And if you have any questions as you view this, please put them in the post for me or Michelle. And you can find them on Well Armed Woman. You can go to Michelle Camp's Facebook page as well and find these links. You can go to kimforutah.com to find out more about me and support me as I run for Congress in Utah's 4th Congressional District, where our primary is going to be held June 30th. So I'm looking for supporters, volunteers, and donations. So kimforutah.com, and have a great evening. Avoid this COVID pandemic, and I hope you're doing well through all this, and have a great night.